What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Played Out podcast. My name is Creator Gator, aka Kyle, and I'm here with my ever lovely assistant, James. James, how are you doing?
What is up, brother?
I see that all over the place. I don't get it. I'm not.
It's a guy from TikTok. It's sketch.
Yeah. I like eventually
Tuesday, special play.
I eventually found like the origin of the meme after like having to watch like a know your meme thing like a boomer, but like I did not get any of that initially.
It's incredible to me that now like looking up know your meme is now like a thing that boomers do. You know what I mean?
They probably don't. They probably just like hear it once and then assume that the kid's just weird and then like keep going on.
I do feel like for like soon to be 30-year-old, I'm very in with the slang.
With the kids.
I'm not gonna say that I'm in with the kids because that sounds super sus. But I'm gonna say I'm in with the Gen Z slang.
Sure you are. What up, fam? It's lit.
What's up, brother?
What's up, brother? Oh, so here we are. We are basically summarizing the articles from Warhammer Community that happened last week, because although there's not, big like fact reveals, there is a lot of little tidbits that we would like to talk about. Also, it helps anybody who doesn't want to specifically go through and read each of these articles, because
there's a lot of fluff.
I'm not going to say they're painful to read, but they are full of like, isn't our product amazing? Like, isn't our product just the best product?
Modularity.
I'm gonna hit you with them keywords, and you're gonna love it.
Buzzwords. So, plug and play.
Yep. So I don't blame anybody who doesn't like sit there and spam the Warhammer Community article from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. kind of like I do every day, because it gets me through the day. Yeah, so like we can actually read them and then to pull out any of the important details and then talk about it. So
we're gonna squeeze out them good bits so you don't have to.
Exactly. Ugh.
I made a very sus hand motion just then. don't just listen for that one.
don't look, just listen.
But yeah, no, essentially there's been a lot, like with the announcement of 4th post Adepticon, there's been a lot, like I feel like, and we talked about this last time, we're going to get like 2 to 3 articles every week, I think, until launch, basically explaining what the book is going to entail, because they've already gone to print, right? The edition is
it's
done.
out. But yeah, they're not editing anything anymore.
No. So we're gonna get like, basically they're gonna like read little bits and pieces and like give us little breadcrumbs until like, so when the book drops in July or June, we're not like, well, I guess I'm just gonna like read it once or twice. Yeah, read it once or twice, go to a tournament, and then argue with some other dude about it.
I mean, inevitably that's gonna happen. That's
true.
That's gonna be the first like 3 months. Is just like, oh, that's how that works. And it's like, yes. That is how that works.
I appreciate the IV drip though, because it's like very like, okay, like I can digest like little bits and pieces. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like I take a little bit here, a little bit there. Ooh, no battle shock. Ooh, double turns.
Yeah. People were like upset. They were like, they need to drop it like all at once. And I'm like,
no, that's not how the hype works, brother.
That's not exactly. That's not how you build. That's not how you build the hype. And 2, like they're gonna, even if they drop something all at once, they're gonna drop like all of Order at once, and then everyone's gonna like
all the Order people are gonna suck it up,
like looking through. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so it's definitely gonna be a while until we know like everything. But until then, we get to talk about it. And hey, we've already had some stuff confirmed from our last podcast. This is episode 5. Last one was 4 for 4th edition. And we are basically recapping the week from 3/27 to 4/1. Spoilers, there was no article today about Age of Sigmar. There was one about gnomes for Blood Bowl.
Sad.
I was just as hyped as you were, I'm sure. So let's talk about what do we know. And this is all coming from the Warhammer Community article of 3/27. So the big one, and the one that everyone should be super, super excited for, Wounds is now health.
It do make sense. People said that anyway.
I remember learning 40K in 2020 or 2019 and being like, why? Like, wait, there's a 2 wound stat, but that has nothing to do with your actual wound characteristic.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's two different phases of like the doing damage and retaining health phase that are very colloquially confusing.
Yeah.
Because it's the same freaking word.
Yeah. And I like everyone who's played more than a month understands, all right, fine. That's just the way we call stuff, right? You know what I mean? This model has 4 wounds, but I super welcome this because I believe this is a turning of the corner from going from like old timey British, listen, we've done this since 86, so we're still going to call it wounds regardless of if it makes sense, to now calling it health, like every video game ever, and a lot more modern tabletop games do.
Yeah. I also feel like it's one of those things that this is a tidying. Like, hey, we're redoing it from the ground up. We might as well make it right. You know what I mean? Huge. Do it good the first time, or do it good the fourth time, I guess.
Listen, if they are taking it from like the ground up to here, I want them to go through and get rid of anything that doesn't make sense to a modern audience. And we've said before, this whole thing is about them trying to onboard as many new people as possible.
Yeah.
And use it as more of a modern, ideally, framework so that they can keep going from here.
Yeah, this isn't a quality of life thing for people that have like hours and hours in the game because they already know what this means. You know what I mean? Like, this is for new people coming in, understanding the game, and, you know, referring to things correctly because you're going to refer to wounds almost in every phase.
Yep, true. Other than that, we have it confirmed that they are measuring 3 inches from a 40 millimeter objective marker.
Called correctly by the boys.
I know, yeah, crazy. So shocker to know it's going to work probably very similar to 40K. I would assume, because the first thing that when everybody saw this, they're like, wait a minute, I can do conversions. I can do math. 130 millimeters is bigger than that. 13 centimeters is bigger than 7.2 something inches or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And everyone's like, the big bases are just going to sit on the objectives. And it's like, I'm sure they will have a way that the big bases just don't sit on the objectives.
Yeah, they're probably going to do the same impassable thing they do with 40K.
Mm-hmm. You can move through the objective marker, but you cannot finish on top of the objective marker.
I can't put my big spiders on top of the base.
I
can't just put 6 spiders on the board and control every objective.
The game is just moving spider butts. Yeah, it'd be hilarious, and like I would go back and clip me like saying what I just said, you know what I mean, with a bunch of just meme text and sound over it if I'm incorrect, and they don't do that, and like, you don't know, we want you to put your big fat butt on there and just like hold the objective.
I'm about to own so many more spiders.
The game is now Big Butts.
That's my list name. I got big butts and I cannot lie.
True. But yeah, I'm excited for that. It'll make it so that objective markers are the same as they are in 40K, which will just help people transition just like one less step of like, oh, by the way, if you want to play this game effectively, you have to own 6 12-inch massive neoprene markers.
Yeah, it is kind of nice. So the board isn't just like gigantic circles.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, wow, look at this really cool thematic board and gigantic white circles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because for every game I have the same objective marker, and the Age of Sigmar one, like at the end of the edition, I don't use them anymore. I use clear plastic discs because like they just look bad when I have, because they're black and they just say like the number of
1
objective. Yeah, and they just say 1 on it, 1, 2, 3. You know what I mean? So it's like it's not a thematic board anymore. So a lot of people had clear ones, and now that's going to be like a less of an issue. So
I just bought objective markers.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited for that. Sad. That's what you get for buying at the end of the edition. I'm not buying any more Stormcast models, specifically if I don't like the look at them. You know what I mean?
It's true. You might get new, but I'm not gonna get new hot Gits. You're gonna get new hot Stormcast. Like, that's true. Confirmed. I can get I can get more models if I want to.
Yeah.
But I'm not buying like any more like
just don't buy for rules.
Yeah, don't buy any books, please. Everyone listening to this, do not buy another book because they are almost useless.
Yeah, don't buy the books. And honestly, when the cards come out, unless you just got a book, don't buy the new cards.
No.
If you're Stormcast and Skaven, specifically don't buy the new cards because they're gonna like change them once you get your book.
Yes.
So
you're primed for that the first meta sweep.
Shocked. Yeah. I'm shocked at how many people I saw with Space Marine cards and like during the index of 10th, and then like the Space Marine book came out and like their massive stack of Space Marine cards was gone.
Yup.
You're like, man, dude.
That's what happens when you're the first one through the gate, you know?
I guess so. Yeah. Speaking of going through the gate, Battle Shock, it's been removed.
It's gone. It's good. That's good. It's a good thing.
It is good.
Yeah. I think legitimately like it's supposed to be like it's supposed to feel a little more thematic. It gives you some tools for like Night Haunt and like Carnosaurs, like these big scary models are supposed to be like, oh well, you're gonna run away because they're really scary. And you're like, okay, well, like, that's cool. But now I have to, like, do this weird bookkeeping thing at the end of the turn, which doesn't really feel scary. It just kind of feels, like, annoying for, like, the wound calculation. Like, if you could just bake this into, like, the wounds and saves, that'd be super hype, you know? Or the damage, you know? Because it's just extra damage at the end of the day, you know?
Yeah. It's definitely, you can feel it. It's, again, one of those things where it's a carryover from Warhammer Fantasy Battles where, like, it absolutely makes sense when you have, like, a bunch of rats and soldiers and skeletons and they're fighting, like, these crazy demon things. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, it makes sense in, like, that thematic way. But I'm glad they're getting rid of that specifically as a mechanic when they're rebuilding it from the ground up. Hot take, though. I do not think Bravery is gone.
Okay.
I think
they're going to implement Bravery?
I think there's going to be things on War Scroll cards where it's going to be like roll 2d6, and if you roll over their Bravery, things happen.
You mean like I think it's going to be a part of like the combat resolution. Like it's like the effect is essentially the same, it just moved.
Yeah, I think it's going to be again like we'll talk about it later when we talk about like abilities. I think it's going to be hyper specific, but I think there's going to be things, especially in Spooky Ghosts, where it's like right after you finish your move, right? You're like look at someone within 12, roll 2d6. If you roll above their Bravery, like they lose a model or something like that.
You make a spooky score happen if you roll above the spooky score.
I think I think Battle Shock as we know it is gone. I think there's still going to be a Bravery Bravery mechanic in some way, shape, or form just because the ghosts exist.
Yeah, I think it's I mean like I do think that you can math it out in the damage that the ghosts do, right? It's like anyone that would have run from Bravery, you can just make them that much more effective in combat, you know? Yeah. So whatever models that would have run from Bravery are killed in the combat phase. And yes, different models have like Rock Guts are very good at like shrugging damage, but they're not good for Bravery. And like Stormcast are very good at Bravery, not as good at shrugging damage, you know? Yeah. So it's like, it's definitely like
not that good at Bravery.
What do you mean?
We only have 7 Bravery, and then our banner gives us an 8, right? But like Khorne is 10.
Yeah, all demons are like 10, and like OC Bone Reapers are like 10.
Yeah, I was surprised when I was looking through at how many factions are just 10.
Yeah, that's like Necrons. Like Necrons are like 10. Yeah. I honestly think it's one of those things that like. It's like I think they're doing, and a lot of the changes that we're seeing here are trying to basically simplify the game. They're taking steps out so that the minutia of like it's not like disarming the high level players, I don't think, but I think it's taking like fine minutia out of the game that is more gotcha-y than like a tactician. Like a tactical choice, right? Yeah. Like one of the ones, it's not in this slide, but there's one coming up that I know we both kind of want to talk about that, you know, there's things that they're doing intentionally to make the game simpler, right? Yes. Like they're trying to take choices out of the game so that like the individual, like the players aren't bogged down by the choices of the micro when you should be focusing on like the macro and the scoring, you know?
Yeah. I definitely like that. One thing that I hope goes the way of the dodo is weapon options. Like weapon options as a strategic choice. Like they already kind of did that by removing points from different weapon options, right?
Yeah.
But I almost don't want a different, like for spears and clubs on my Saurus
Yeah, you
warriors.
shouldn't really have that. I think you get one profile. Like it's just do the math once, you know?
Yeah.
Like especially with the range is changing, there's not really a difference anymore.
Yeah.
You know?
I feel like if you pay like I think warriors are like $60 for like 10 of them. If you pay $60 for 10 warriors, you should be able to with full confidence build them exactly how you want them to look and not worry about, oh man, did I build them wrong?
Yeah.
You know
well, I don't think that like it is one of those things that like it's annoying because you feel like you have to kind of pick an archetype and stick with it.
Yeah. And I know 40K basically they picked a very, very extreme end of it where it was free basically everyone gets free war gear. Where it was like, hey, you build it how you like want it. You know what I mean? Where there's some like this is just a better choice, right? But for like bolters, that was one of the things where I was like, oh my god, this is the best change of the whole edition. Was every bolter is the same bolter. Yeah. You know what I mean?
And it's just like a quality of life thing that's like it doesn't like it ultimately it doesn't matter. Like, you know, like the math is roughly similar all across the board, you know. Just give him a gun. Just make it sound cool. Yeah. Give him one gun, it's a cool gun, you know. Medium, low, medium, high gun, you know.
True. The next point is everything is an ability. From moving, fighting, shooting, and casting spells, and they each have a declare step and an effect step.
I like that.
Yeah, I like it too.
I like declare and effect because it's very like you know when command abilities show up. You know, instead of being like, oh, like you charged into me, and then like somebody's like, okay, are you going to declare Overwatch or whatever? And I'm like, well, you have to finish your move, and then I declare Overwatch. You know, like that's highly specific for Overwatch. Or Unleash Heck, I keep calling it Overwatch. But the, you know, it like other things like all out defense. Like there's a lot of times where it does have a clear like order of operations, but not everybody follows that to the T.
Yeah, and it's hard to. And I don't know if this is necessarily going to like fix that, but it definitely will make it easier for knowing when things should happen. Because I remember even driving down to the
Cherokee,
the tournament, we had to look up the rules for because we were like, oh, there's like 6 Scarlet Doom lists. Do impact hits hit before I can declare Unleash Hell?
Yeah,
and that was one of the things where it was like you kind of have to go into the details of the code and see.
Yeah, you have to read through how the core rules work to like basically determine when your command takes effect and happens.
Yep. Yeah, so I like this. If anyone's familiar with Magic, I think it's very familiar because it feels like an instant spell. You know what I mean? Where it's like at all of these instances, you can use your instant spell. So you kind of understand like how those things are broken up. So I think I think the command system will work very similar to how stratagems work in 40K, where it's like broken down into when, who, where, you know what I mean?
Like it's going to give you, and a lot of the things that they're describing too are all like, they're like, oh, these are color coded phases. You know what I mean? Like we're clearly going to break out for you. And I honestly hope that we get something similar to like the General's Handbook back, where it says like, okay, like in your shooting phase, you can use these commands. You know what I mean? And then it'll be like, you can use these, like this is your action, this is your, or whatever it is. This is your declare, this is your effect, you know, or whatever it is. And I think that is going to be it just tidies things, you know?
I think so too. I think it makes it so you don't have to go so deep into the core rules to understand how things shake out. What on the like stack is what people call it. You know what I mean? It'll be very like, oh, when your opponent declares that they're going to attack your unit, that is when you use
like this effect or this other declare. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
like we're in the declaration phase. Like you're saying all out attack, I respond by saying all out defense. You know?
Yeah, and that's 100% going to be something that like we're going to have to look out for, because it's very easy to blah 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 and very easy to just like play. You know what I mean?
I feel like it's very blah 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 now. Like a lot of
Yeah.
commands are blah 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 because
Yeah,
it's
well,
so.
that's what I mean. I think like we're used to playing blah blah blah, and like I think Age of Sigmar is like super friendly in the sense that like I've been, I've been in my shooting phase and been like, hey, so I forgot my magic. Can I go back and do my magic?
Do you
And like,
mind if I go and do my magic now, please?
can I go back 3 phases? And like almost all of my opponents have been like, yeah, I don't care. And I'm like, cool. I just want to try to cast Mystic Shield over here. I rolled a 4. So never mind. And they're like, okay.
Can't change the past. Keep going.
Or like I'll roll like, oh, I got a 7, and then they'll like, I rolled a 9. You're like, all right, cool.
Well, that was cool to talk about. Sorry for wasting your time.
I'm sorry I brought us back to bring us back here again.
Oh, sorry. Do you mind if I cast Merciless Blizzard really quick? I just need to cast Merciless Blizzard. You don't mind, right? You don't mind. Oh, boxcars. Cool. All right, so that just goes off.
Yeah. I think that literally happened in the game with you and me, where it was like, you were like, oh yeah, just cast it, and I cast it as like boxcars, and you're like, well, I'm gonna auto unbind it because of way, shape, or form, and I'm like, you can't auto unbind.
Can't not with Primal Dice, not with Primal Dice, buddy.
Yeah. Crazy game. But yeah, overall, I like this. I love that. I think it's a great way to kind of break everything down and start just like getting into the weeds of where exactly things are happening. And I think most people who play games like this, their brain will like that a lot more.
Yeah. It keeps things clean, which is important in a complicated war game.
Agreed.
All right.
Yep. Going on to slide 3. You want to start walking us through that? This is Warhammer Community Article from March 28th.
The following day. This is the Modular article where I honestly think they might have said it 12 times in this article. It's crazy.
They loved it.
That's their favorite buzzword right now.
I understand why they like it.
Yes. I do think that it's a little like this article felt very like there was some cool stuff, but this one was very like look at our pretty boxes. Look at you know. So essentially the big thing was the core rules. They're separating the core rules and advanced rules. So essentially the core rules is how things move, like how things like interact with each other. You know what I mean in the game. Or like how things like operate. So moving, fighting, shooting, unit coherency, and objectives, like basics of the game are covered in the core rules, right? And then there's like a core rules or simple version of the game that you can play. And then there's an advanced set of rules that's for like matched play, tournament play, and like other stuff. So there's another what's it called? There's another slide kind of explaining that a little better than this slide, but in the advanced rules, you get commands, terrain, magic, army composition, so like battle regiments and things like that. Command models, which I'm assuming are like just like leaders and things like.
Yeah. I mean, we don't know for sure what those are. I think both of us can speculate that is probably models that have command or can use command abilities.
They're like general. I honestly think it's probably your general choice. Like they're probably taking away like the command traits, and this like command model thing may be a fill-in. I don't really know. But and then battle tactics. So where it looks like they're trying to basically. This also seems more of like a bookkeeping thing. Like they're basically trying to move things into separate boxes. So when they go back to correct something, like, you know, certain commands, terrain or whatever, they don't have to touch the core rules. Like the core rules are always the core rules. They don't have to change. Yep. You know, they can go back and touch like, oh, the magic, you know what I mean? They can release a new book, be like, hey guys, this is how like this spell was busted last season. This is how this spell's going to work now, you know, or like this command trait or command whatever, like specific battle regiment was like way overused. We didn't see anything else in the population. We're making it harder to do or easier to do other ones. You know, yeah. It's the easiest way to basically like it's something that we like to say a lot. And this is very much a Kyleism, but is like the pull levers. This separates your like, okay, we never want to change the core rules. We want that to kind of stay stoic and stagnant. And we want to be able to pull levers on like the different complicated aspects of the game.
100%. You hit the nail on the head. I think this is why Matt specifically is so proud of this, that he's kind of like taking this and running with it. And like, you know, I think there's a reason why they put it so early in the reveal step. And I understand why nobody really, like, even me, like, I was like, I don't understand, like, why, you know what I mean? But it's one of those things where they're literally just gridding it out and separating. They're like separating it. So when they have to mess with something, they only have to mess with one thing. And one of the things that's on this slide that I was like, okay, I understand. So think of where all the magic rules are in Age of Sigmar 3 right now, right? So like, where are they in the physical books? Okay. Now think of the Magic of Antor rules and where those are in the GHB. Now, to understand how those work together, you have to sit there with two books and
and like cross compare.
You have to sit there with two books, cross compare, and then you have to look through your like book upon book of printed out PDFs of all the FAQs and erratas.
Yeah.
To understand how the primal system works, right? This way, basically, the whole goal is whenever you're reading about like the magic system, the primal system will just be right there into it. Like, so as you're reading through the, like, everything is kind of next to each other that should be next to each other.
Yeah.
And you don't have to cheat off to jump from place to place or change anything extra.
Yeah.
Because that's all in the GHB specific boxes.
Like, we'll say like 2025 season, right? Like like basically like the launch goes off, everybody gets indexes, we all are starting to get rules and things like that. We're playing games. Summer of 2025 comes around where they're trying to release a new book, a new General's Handbook, right? You're going to get a handbook that's going to have a new magic section in it, or a new whatever, like whatever that flavor of the month is, or that like the season will have a new section in the book that like describes magic or describes commands or describes, you know, because it makes everything more cohesive as a system.
The, like, you know, in our previous work, we've worked with like drawing revisions and like how to keep everything sort of like, how do we add edits to physical media? You know what I mean? And then like keep track of all of those things that happened. And that's one of those things where it's like, it's extremely difficult. And I don't blame anybody who's coming from a purely physical medium when they try to do this and like fail epically. Cause like, you know what I mean? That's kind of how been like the Warhammer stuff has been going, right? Where they've been editing physical documents and doing erratas and FAQs and trying to like hunker in on, all right, we're like at the end of the edition, you just have a book that just has pen written all over it, fixing everything. And ideally this way it limits that as much as physically possible.
Yeah. I remember what like part of like my, like your and my tournament prep is like, you need your book, the General's Handbook, and you need to print out all like errata and FAQs for the core rules for your specific faction.
Yep.
And then for the most recent like FAQ drop, you know, which was that like MetaWatch article. It was like something Nullstone adored. Like it was Nullstone Cache is what it was called. And then it's like through all of those, if there are any like changes to your army or questions about interactions, it's like, oh, like if a niche question that I don't know off the top of my head is asked of me, I'd look through like 7 documents to like answer the question effectively, you know? Yeah.
Think of one of the things that like happened right before we went to the tournament was the core rules got changed in a very specific way. It was about the ward stuff.
Yeah, how wards work, because basically like Croak, like the way that Croak was passing it's not just Croak, but there were like essentially you can choose to take like if your Saurus Guard unit, right, that has a bodyguard rule that can like soak damage, right? If they are choosing to soak damage, like they weren't targeted as the or if they aren't the target of the spell or ability, right? They can't then take a ward roll, you know? Like them soaking damage is the ward roll. Like that's them taking the damage, right?
Yeah.
If they themselves are targeted, they can then make like a 6-up ward roll if they have a 6-up ward roll. Yeah. But you can't like you can't stack wards essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. And passing damage is a ward, you know?
And that's one of those things that I feel like instead of like basically making an errata to a core rule and have it affect, like, you know what I mean, kind of like a tournament landscape, they could basically just change that so it shows up in, you know, the GHB specific place. Potentially, they could also just change it in the core rules again, like we know. But it's one of those things where now, like, they have a better way of isolating things that affect specific, like, end users. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Or like specific use cases.
In specific use cases, maybe not in the example that I just gave, because I feel like that is just a core thing that everyone should understand about the, you know, the shifting. But
it also comes up, like, it doesn't always come up. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like there are certain people, things like Praetors, right? Like they don't have an additional word save; they have like specific rules for passing wounds.
Yeah,
you know, or like, you know, but there are certain units like that have the bodyguard role, and I think that Night Haunt was also subject to this because they have those like big spirit hosts that like pass wards, and I think all Night Haunt get a 6-up ward.
A 6-up ward, yeah.
So
yeah, it's funny because, like, I don't think this is super impactful to like 98% of the player base, right? But I do like that they're going back and trying to understand a better way that they can implement both like physical and digital updates to rules and have it not just try to look like an ink-filled, you know, pamphlet at the end.
Yeah. And I'm honestly hoping that this also helps with distribution, right? Like,
Same.
Let's say like, oh, like there's a glaring problem with the magic. You know what I mean? Like when, you know, at launch, like when Wizards of whatever it's called, Wizards of Andor, or like the Andorian Locust season launched, people were yeeting grot missiles, you know what I mean? With blizzards in the gun, you know? And it's like something like that is like, it's not a good game state, and it's not a good game interaction, and it's something that needs to be removed as fast as possible, right?
Yeah.
So what they did was you had to wait a couple months until there was, or a month or two before there was a quick redaction or an FAQ saying you can't cast Merciless Blizzard if you moved, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that this should be a quicker rollout, especially because it's PDFs. It's all like the peas are no longer touching the carrots when you know,
things are more isolated. So hopefully, like, correcting things is easier. But do you want to take us on to slide 4?
Yes, sir. Slide 4. This one is the. I found this one the most confusing, if I'm being honest, because they were saying that there's going to be like different like sub games or something like that, or he's like, this is like like different platforms of
this is something that I think this is something that is, again, it's hard to describe, but I'm glad they said it, and I put the exact quote in here because I was like, okay, I feel like this is kind of important. And the quote is, Warhammer Age of Sigmar is much more than just a game. It's essentially a platform that supports many types of games. And especially like us, again, this is a competitive focused podcast, so 98% of the time we're playing with GHB.
Yes,
we're just playing with GHB.
We go all the way to the bottom right, and that's what we do.
Exactly, yeah.
I get all the books and the seasonal rules.
Yeah, but not everybody plays like that. You know what I mean? Like,
I am excited for Spearhead.
Yes, we're excited for Spearhead. We're currently playing a Path to Glory. You know what I mean? At our friendly local game store.
War Gamer Guild, check them out. They're the best.
Check them out. They're near Trenton. Great deals, great people, great games. People. 10 out of 10.
Quality Kyles.
The Kyles. But like, I feel like the whole goal of what they're doing right now with building it from the ground up is they want to build a framework of rules that they can then kind of use not only for every Age of Sigmar game that they can think of, but also like potentially other game styles. You know what I mean? If that makes sense. Like, they want to build a framework that they can build the next 10 years on.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
I do think that this is like using this, like going through with this much of like a fine tooth comb in like into your actual gaming system is like how you kind of need to do a from the ground up rework, you know? Like, you can't really like, you can't blah, blah, blah it, you know, like like these steps. And I think that it's good. And the way that they explained it here as well, it's really good, where it's like, hey, for Spearhead, you only need the core rules. For Path to Glory, you only need, you know, you need everything but the battle tactics, you know? And then it's like, you kind of see like matched play in General's Handbook, kind of like that kind of goes hand in hand to me, because I always feel like Yes.
Yeah, when you play match play without the general's hand, the only thing is like I could definitely see people. I mean, many people at the game store, they're like, I don't want to play like I want to play like a match play game. You know what I mean? I don't want to just
Yeah.
play like a
Blizzy Wizzy.
an open game, but I don't want to play with Blizzard Wizard, or I don't want to play
Yes.
with Battle Tactics. You know what I mean? So it's kind of funny because like we're kind of looking at the system and being like, that's weird. They also said like, oh, you can play without magic if you want, and everyone was like, what? What are you talking about?
What are you talking about,
Yeah,
son?
but I've overheard multiple people say like, I would rather play this game without Battle Tactics, and that's a thing you can do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's technically a thing you always could do, but now like there's a supported way to do it.
You play Path to Glory.
That's true. I guess match play still has Battle Tactics.
Yeah,
but they don't have the seasonal Battle Tactics, which I assume we'll still have.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is the other thing. So Spearhead, they confirm Spearhead equals Spearhead Battle Pack plus War Scroll cards plus unique cards. So it is 100% going to be like its own separate game. It's just like the steps of playing are going to be very similar.
Yeah. It almost seems like they're trying to do like a little underworldsy thing. You know what I mean? Like not in like the card system way, but in the like maybe. I don't think so. I think they're still going to get War Scrolls. I think they're just going to be like more simple, you know?
Yeah. No, I definitely think so. I think their Spearhead War Scrolls, the unique cards, I think is how like their secondary system works, and then the Spearhead Battle Pack is like what the mission is, and you know what I mean, that kind of thing.
I do think that this is like I'm excited. I hope that Spearhead is very good, but I could see this getting like the Combat Patrol treatment, where like they're trying to accomplish a lot at once. You know what I mean? Like, and Spearhead's like a whole nother game. You know?
Yeah,
and it's like you have to balance that as well. Even though it's smaller, like it's not going to have as big of a player base, and it's going to be tougher to give that attention when there's just as many. I guess there's not as many units in Spearhead, but like,
yeah, the only thing that gives me hope for Spearhead is it's a closed loop system. Like, there's no new elements. It's like always going to be, well, at least at launch, it's always going to be these boxes, and they're going to add new boxes, right?
Yeah.
So hopefully, when they were designing it, you know, they took that into account.
Yeah. I mean,
but that was the same thing for Combat Patrol, and it is what it is.
So are they taking? I didn't see this in any of the articles, but are they taking like our Vanguard boxes like Spearhead units, or are they going to release new Spearhead boxes?
I do not think it is confirmed what they're doing with Vanguard. I think they mentioned Vanguard. They mentioned Vanguard by name once, and they showed pictures of Vanguard when they were talking about Spearhead.
Yeah,
which makes me think that the Vanguards are
what they're going to use as the basis for like the first
that's basically going to be the index.
Yeah,
and then every version after
is going to have its own little box. Like Stormcast is getting a Spearhead box. You know?
Yes. Yeah. With the launch box. And people were like, oh yeah, the Spearhead rules should be in the box. No. No. You should never put rules inside of a box, and that's because these boxes are going to live on a shelf for 20 years. You know what I mean? Like, you should look, like when I unbox my skinks from 2002, and I look at like what their profiles were originally, you know what I mean? That doesn't mean anything to me. That's not going to mean anything to anyone in the next 3 years.
You know,
the best thing you can do is have a QR code in the box that points you to wherever the digital rules for these Spearhead are going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So
it is interesting too. Like, will you get like when I get a box of, say I get a box of skinks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Am I going to get a QR code for like 2 different War Scrolls? Because like if skinks are in Spearhead, right?
Yeah.
Well, I guess they're not, because they're not. I mean, Saurus Warriors that would be,
Yeah.
So if Saurus Warriors are in Spearhead, like, would I get 2 like War Scrolls in the box, or would I get like a link to 2 different War Scrolls? You know.
So I don't know. Were you on board with the 40K app when it launched at the beginning of 10?
No.
So they had this whole issue, because when you would go and look at Infantry Squad or when you went and looked at, I don't know, like, so Intercessors, right? They'd have like the Intercessor War Scroll for the game, and then they would have like the Intercessor War Scroll right under it, and then
for Combat
Patrol. So it was basically like everything that was in a Combat Patrol had 2 different, and they were all in the same location.
That sucks.
And it was terrible. They finally made a different tab, which was like you click on a faction, and now it's like, do you want like
40K or Combat Patrol.
Yeah, you want 40K or Combat Patrol, and then they make you choose. You know what I mean? And at that point, you're like, okay, I at least can understand what's going on here.
Yeah, put it in a specific box, please. I'm really stupid.
Yeah, so like I feel like you should only ever, if they do, I don't think they are putting a QR code in it, but if they do, it should just go immediately to that. Or like when they eventually update the app, and this basically is going to be a copy paste of the 40K app. You know what I mean? When it lives in there, hopefully it lives in its own specific tab.
I'm so excited for the new. I love the iOS app. I am so excited for the new app.
Really? I'm scared. I'm terrified. Because like ours works.
I want that tasty, like these are my rules page. You know what I mean?
That's true.
That's
I know. Yeah. The battle bunker or whatever, you like click one button. You're like, oh yeah, these are my rules. I do love that.
This is all I give a fuck about.
Yeah, I know. Right. Yeah. And like, you don't have to like, remember the battle days where like you'd have to sit there on Wahapedia with like 4 Wahapedia tabs open on your phone while 100%. Your phone is just constantly dying.
I remember pushing cups around your table and pretending they were broadsides.
Yeah. And then the last section of this slide is another quote from Matt, where this was something. This is like everyone who read this article, they read this thing and they're like, I hate that. This whole system sucks because of this exact quote. And the quote is, we don't need to. So they're saying is as they're like going through and finding things they need to update, they would say, we don't need to issue an errata online. Instead, we could have a new general's handbook. And everyone was like,
you're going to sell me a new book?
You're going to sell me another $45 book for
better rules?
Better rules, for a rules update? This is literally going back in time. We're back 10 years ago. You know what I mean? Like,
I don't think that's what he means. I at least like I think everything else in this article screams like
digital.
Yeah, exactly.
Digital.
100%. Like I can't imagine that like with how they're orienting and putting the game together. Again, this is not what he said. So I'm
putting words in his mouth.
I'm on the hopium.
I know. I'm also team hopium.
Yeah.
Because I read that and I thought that too, where it was like, in the context of what they're saying, like when you say General's Handbook, I'm not thinking of the physical book that I would hold in my hand. I'm thinking of the tab that is right next to it that says General's Handbook.
Yes.
Like the General's Handbook box that includes the core rules and the 6 advanced rules. And I think they're literally just saying, hey, it's going to be a living rule system instead of saying, which IMO, I kind of thought it already was, because when they change things, they change in the app.
Yes, they do. But the issue is that when people go, they change it in the app to make it updated, but they don't show you like, hey, this was updated this date. You know what I mean?
That's also
They just
true.
change the text.
That's also true.
Which is fine, and it's good because you can show somebody like, hey, this is what it says in the app. But somebody's going to argue like, hey, like I know how this works. I played this X years ago. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm like, listen, dude, I promise you it doesn't work like that anymore. But like, if I have the sheet of the FAQ, and I can be like, hey, here's the FAQ from, June 2023. This is when this happened. And then they go, okay. Because they understand how FAQs work,
Yeah.
But I'm hoping that like, I agree that we don't, what I'm hoping he is saying is that instead of getting this like laundry list of things that changes every 3 months, we're just going to get like, I can go to the AOS app, be like, hey, like this is your like bi-weekly update or something like that. And it's like, we just changed this thing.
Oh my God. Can you imagine that?
It'd be amazing.
Can you imagine that? It's so hilarious because that's how video games work.
I think
that's how video games have worked the entire time.
I think bi-weekly would be crazy. I think you do it like once a month. Like once a month is, I think, is the fastest you could do it.
Yeah. Because like it takes time for people to like adjust, right? I'm not one in like
data.
I'm not one in like crazy bug fixes. You know what I mean? Every day. You know what I mean?
No, you get like a patch every month and a half.
Yeah. If something is broken and like they determine that it's broken, like yeeting a grot across the board to deal 46 mortal wounds. You know what I mean? And like I'm okay with them hot fixing things where they're saying, hey, this is a change that we're implementing now.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And ideally that doesn't happen around a tournament.
Yeah.
That's my only thing.
The problem is tournaments are kind of fluid. Like there's GTs everywhere, like, especially if you're going to have a more up-to-date system that we don't have like hard dates that we're like basically planning away from, you're going to have those tournaments that are like, oh, this is happening. Like this got changed the weekend before the tournament. So all the models I have painted, based, and ready to go for my list.
Yeah.
I
can't use that one specific thing that like you know exactly what I'm talking about. Where like they'll write a rule, it will mess up, and then everyone is like, "Oh, that's not how they intended it to be." But everyone is like shopping and buying models, being like, "But that's how it's written, baby. Let's go."
Yeah. It's airbrush. All right, cool. Put them on the table.
I'm gonna abuse this till the cows come home.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then the cows come home 2 weeks later, and they're like, "I wasted so much money," and you're like, "Yeah, you did because you're stupid."
No, they knew what they were doing. They knew what they were doing.
Exactly. You wanted to be the hottest girl at the dance for 2 weeks,
and you were. And I hope you had fun.
And I hope you had fun. You did it. But that brings us to our next slide. And this is for March 29th. And there's some juicy ones in here.
This is a good one. This is that hot one. You know what I mean? This is that like, ooh, this is how my combat's changing. Ooh, this is how my battle regiments are going to work. Ooh.
Yeah, this, like, I read this and I was surprised at how much I was like, this is the same. I wasn't expecting that. So walk us through this.
Did we talk about the engagement thing yet? I feel like I'm not seeing that in here. I can't remember what.
That we've already talked about that. We knew that from day. Okay. We knew that from day zero that they were changing the 3-inch
engagement. Okay, cool. Mm-hmm. So sorry to continue with what Kyle was talking about. They confirmed that we're still going to have person that deploys first, like that has their army on the board first, gets to pick who goes first or second, right?
Which is crazy. I'm already wrong. Yeah, I said that was going away in fourth, and it's still here.
Yeah, I said it was going to get funky, so I could be right because I was very vague. I was intentionally very vague. Yeah. But I am of the opinion that Battle Reg is currently way too strong. You know what I mean? Yes. It is the auto include. It is what like you get to set pace, you know? Like everybody's fighting to set pace unless you have specific like or army or faction specific stuff that you're trying to bake into your list to kind of make the synergies work, right? So I think that 1-drops should be much more common. You know, it should be easy to get a 1-drop or get like the unified keyword in your other battle regiments for your armies, like for OBR. I guess OBR is kind of more battle regi, but like let's say like I don't know the Soulblight Gravelords, right? Like if you want to run 8 zombie dragons or 6 zombie dragons, right?
Yeah, like
you should have a way to put 6 zombie dragons on the field and get them in a 1-drop, you know? And you get like, cause then you get your like spicy, like Soulblight stuff, or like you can get your flavor rules from OBR or from Soulblight, but still be able to like compete for that, you know?
So in pace. That world, as someone who's built that list in my brain at least 3 times, it usually is just a 2-drop. Because you have to take an extra. The thing that keeps you is
2 behemoth leaders.
Yep, 2 behemoth leaders.
Yeah.
So in that world where that becomes a 1-drop, what keeps anyone from not doing that? Like,
because I don't think it's like in a world where OC hopefully is a thing. It's not who kills better, it's who scores points better.
Well, I'm not even talking about units. I'm saying like if everyone has the easy choice of putting everything in a 1-drop, what's to keep people from doing that? What's to keep an entire tournament list from everyone is a 1-drop and now we're just rolling off?
Well, I feel like it should be like my problem right now is I feel like you get nothing. Like if I like me as a Gits player, right? Like I get none of the fun little Gits rolls because I choose to be in a 1-drop. Which is good. Like it's a competitive. I like being in a 1-drop. I make the decision every single time, right? But like, let's say like I wanted to play with some of the cool Gits rules, like, but I don't want to sacrifice my ability to get access to those fun little rules just because I'm trying to get a 1-drop. I think there should be like a tiered system where it's like, okay, you get to play with some of the rules and get a 1-drop. Or you like hard buy into all of the rules and you get to play with all the funny rules, but then you don't get a 1-drop. You know?
What rules are you leaving behind when you choose to be a 1-drop?
I mean, for Gits is a bad example because there's only really one sub battle reg, you know. But like I know for Stormcast specifically, like you get a lot of stuff for buying into like different.
If we have any like regiment that gives us an extra enhancement, we can take an enhancement as a holy command.
Yeah.
And holy commands are kind of cool.
Yeah, and it's cool and it feels thematic and you get to play with your rules. You know what I mean? And I think there should be more stuff like that, right? I'm currently just going into Wahapedia to look at the
what the
one gets one. It's literally it's about it's Dankhold Troggoths. It's one like leader Dankhold Trogboss and two a what's it called?
2 rock guts.
No. It's not 2 rock guts. It's like one like regular Dankhold Trogboss.
Okay. Yeah.
But and I think you get another artifact essentially. So,
okay.
Which is good because like, you know, more artifacts are great. And like the rock or the trog artifacts are incredible. Like they're so good.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Like I guess maybe it kind of already feels like that a little bit in certain armies, but I just feel like it shouldn't be as hard to get a 1-drop. My opinion, you know.
Fair. It's definitely going to be a thing. Like the quote underneath this is, and I kind of shortened it down, but affect the composition of your army. So like they want this choice of turn of like who gets to decide the turn to affect how you build your army.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
It does. You know what I mean?
It still definitely does now. You know what I mean? I'm curious what they're going to tweak to see how it affects it either more or less. You know what I mean? I definitely see changes for Battle Reg coming. Yeah. Whether it's going to get easier or harder to get a 1-drop. I think there's going to be a couple different ways to get it. You know what I mean? So we'll see. It's definitely I'm very curious. I'm just surprised that
they're keeping it.
They're keeping it. I love the first turn bat around thing. I think that is so much better than rolling off every day of the week because it gives you that control. You know what I mean?
And you get to set pace. Like you understand what you want to do and how you want to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It lets you do the thing you want to do immediately from the get, which is awesome. I think that's so cool. Speaking of choice, and this is another quote that I pulled out. This is a hot one. Yeah. So we're talking about the double turn. You know what I mean? That's like Age of Sigmar's bread and butter. We're talking about the double turn. And as a surprise to, I believe, no one, the double turn stays. The double turn is here to stay. In the article, they talked about how like everyone, like players love it, and then like really high ranked players absolutely love it. They like have gone on and on about how like it's one of the best things, and it's the thing that makes the game unique, and it's one of those things that definitely like separates the I play this well to I play this very competitively. You know what I mean? As far as like a what's it called? Like, can you plan? There's so much to be said for can I plan a turn in advance? There's definitely something to be said. Can I take 2 turns from my opponent and still score points? You know what I mean? 100%. And like that, if you can do that, you are one of the best players in the game. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Controlling pace is huge. You know what I mean? Like, and it's one of those things that like you can go first and still control pace, you know? Cause like if we're playing each other, right. And you go first and I set myself in priority for the double, you know what I mean? But you in priority second turn, it's like, oh, well, if I'm not in position to capitalize on a double, you actually want to give it to me. Cause then it's like, oh, like I can't, you know what I mean? I'm not going to do anything with my turn. Like I'm just going to move forward, and then you're in position for a double. You know?
Yeah. And even more so, the thing that they've changed is when you choose to take the double turn, you give up your opportunity to pick a battle tactic for the turn.
Yeah.
So 2 words that I want everyone to take out of that is choose and pick. So when you choose to take the double turn, that's saying like, oh, I've won the priority roll. I am now choosing to take it. You give up your opportunity to pick a battle tactic. And the reason I say those things the way that I said them in a very weird way, right? I've heard some people being like, oh, but if you could make your opponent not take a battle tactic by making them go twice in a row. It's when you choose to take it. So you're good. And then the other one is pick a battle tactic. Now, picking a battle tactic is what we're already doing now. They didn't say draw a battle tactic. They didn't say score secondaries. They said pick a battle tactic, which makes me believe that battle tactics are remaining quasi similar to what we have right now.
Yeah. I don't think they're changing. They're not changing as much as we were hoping.
I know. It's not going to be a full rewrite, and that kind of makes me... And the other thing about pick is, what if there's a random roll for it mechanic?
What do you mean?
If like...
Oh, you mean like... I guess, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, what if you can choose to... Or like, instead of picking a battle tactic, it's like, oh, you don't get to pick. Maybe your opponent picks for you. Or maybe, like... you roll on a table and then get that battle tactic. I don't think that's going to be the way it is, but the way they word it, it opens up the possibility for that option.
Yeah. I definitely think that, like, because we were kind of hoping for like a Tempest of War thing. We were hoping for a lot with the randomness of battle tactics coming forward.
Yeah.
And it kind of like this limits the possibility of that happening drastically, because they're talking about like, hey, like you're going to pick a battle tactic on your turn, which means that it's going to be like a conscious, like most likely you're going to have a list and you're going to be like, I want to take this one because I need to try to do that thing, which is not like, it's an aspect of the game. I don't hate it, but I know that like it's not a popular,
I think, I think
it can be better is what I'm saying. Like there's definitely like, I think the randomness of the drawing, I think it's like really good and really fun because it's like, again, like I think that's why Age of Sigmar players also like the double turn, is there's like an element of randomness that you kind of have to plan for. But I do think that it's hard to give everybody the same deck of battle tactics, because it's like, I mean, actually, it'd be cool if there was like the regular ones, and then you basically take your like faction specific ones and you like put them in the deck. You know what I mean? And then you like shuffle them up, because then like that helps people out for like Tzeentch, who like basically just casts spells. You know what I mean?
You're assuming in this scenario, are people picking it, or
I'm saying it'd be random.
It?
Like I'm saying it'd be random. Tough. Sorry, I kind of like walked myself to the end of my own conversation.
You're good.
So what I was saying is I think it'd be hard to just get a deck, like a generic deck of cards, and be like, okay, these are all the battle tactics you can complete. You know what I mean? Because there's certain battle tactics that like armies either aren't spec'd for, don't have the tools to accomplish, or if they even try to accomplish it, they're just gonna like trade poorly. Yeah. And I think the way that you mitigate something like that is, instead of just having a standard, deck of rules, you get like 6 or 7 that are like generic, and then you get like 5 that aren't. And then you essentially shuffle the deck together, and then you pull one every turn, Yeah. And I
definitely think the way they say pick.
No, it's not. We're not getting something like that.
We're not getting it.
Again, we're dreaming here, Kyle. We're dreaming.
I know. Before the full confirmation, we're still like living in that kind of world, and it's not even one of those things that like
you didn't say that you broke up with me, so I'm just gonna pretend like we're still dating until I hear it. I hear those words.
I don't think the battle tactic system is a bad system. I think mine and everyone who have problems with it, they just don't like that it makes it feel not like a war game. It feels very much like I kind of have to set myself up so I can do these pre-planned, predetermined things that I built my army to do. And if I can kill my opponent
while I'm doing that, awesome. Yeah. It's cherry on the cake instead of the cake.
Yeah. And I'm a little bit disappointed that there's no indication that we're getting more like redone in the battle tactic realm. But I think asking them to give up battle tactics for what they've done with them currently, they're not going to. They're not going to give us that.
No, I think we're kind of writings on the wall,
Yeah, I think we're going to get the battle tactic system. Hopefully they'll be a little bit different and better. You know what I mean? And hopefully they'll avoid the pitfall that is faction specific battle tactics, because that's kind of where it feels bad. You know what I mean? It feels bad when you're facing an army and they can just score points and you're like, I can't do that. Yeah. You know what I mean?
There is a benefit to that.
Yeah.
Which we'll talk about. But
definitely.
There's definitely like, there's elements of that are.
Yeah. There's a lot of pros and cons around this.
Yeah. All right.
So,
you want to take us home?
Yeah.
Slide 6.
Yep. The last thing is they mentioned defensive abilities will last until your next turn, which is something that just felt like a confirmation. That's how it works right now.
Yeah.
So I did watch the MetaWatch article that they posted recently. That was from Adepticon, combination of Stu Black and Matt, who is our boy, our American, in the ring with all the Brits over there.
The American lad.
The American lad, just going hard every day, all day for AOS. But it was at Adepticon with those two. They were just kind of talking about metas in general. Both games are in a relatively healthy state now. You know what I mean? They talked a lot about the pitfalls of early 10th. They talked a lot about the balancing that they've done throughout 3rd. But one of the things that Matt said that I was like, oh, that's why battle tactics aren't changing, is he said he would rather give people battle tactics than make points less and like have that faction flood the board. You know what I mean? And that boils down to something we've talked about previously, where like the battle tactic system, specifically with faction battle tactics and giving people new battle tactics that they can do, is the best way to balance a faction statistically. It might not feel the best, but if you literally give points to specific factions, they'll
win
better.
More games.
They will win more games.
Yeah, you win the game by scoring points, not by killing people.
Exactly. You know? Yeah. So it's definitely one of those things where it's like, it's the best lever they got to get us around that 50% win rate. So I don't see them. I don't see how they would think, oh, I have to do something different with the system because it's already working as intended, and it's the best lever I can pull to get somebody up to that 50% win rate.
There are feel bad moments with like faction battle tactics because like some of them are auto, you know.
Yes.
But it's one of those things that it's an important balancing tool. So it's like giving that up may actually make a worse game, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely one of those, like that would be the thing that you would lose is they'd have to go back to the drawing board in order to balance specific factions. And when they can just throw you like Stormcast, there's nothing inherently terrible about them. You know what I mean? It's just one of those things where it's like,
they don't have good battle tactics.
They don't have good battle tactics. So they gave us a better battle tactic, and guess what? We went from like 43% win rate to like 51. You know what I mean?
That's what happens when we can play the game.
When we can at least get one battle. Like, I wish I could pull up. I didn't keep track of the majority of my scores at the tournament. But like my scores were really high. Like I lost almost all of them, right? But like my scores were high, and that's because I specifically sat down and built my list to score as many battle tactics as I physically could. When you do that, you have a more likelihood chance of winning the game. I just also wasn't removing models that I needed to remove in order to like make the primary. I always would lose on primary. That was when it would boil down to it. I would score 5 battle tactics and lose on primary.
Yeah.
So that is kind of how it is. But Matt talked basically like when he was walking around a tournament, he was interviewing people and being like, oh, like, tell me why you don't think your faction's performing well. And they were like, I don't have battle tactics to score. You know what I mean? My battle tactics suck. And if I can't score something that is like giving, like, I forget what, do you know off the top of your head? Primary versus battle tactics versus
primary
grand
is 1-2
strat?
more. So primary is 1-2 more, so it's 3 points. Usually, there's certain game modes that it changes.
Mm-hmm.
Is like more or less.
Yeah.
But it's 1-2 more normally, so it's 3 points, and then battle tactic is 2, right? But the problem is it's really easy to get 1. It's decently easy to get 2. The third point is where you get hard. Like it gets harder, you know?
So it's basically like a 50-50.
It's like, it's half of your points essentially per turn is a battle tactic. So it's like if you're dropping battle tactics, you need your opponent to drop battle tactics or not score primary, you know?
Yeah.
And it's really hard to stop people from scoring primary when like they get the move. It's their movement phase, right? They can control how many models are going to be on objectives at the end by the end of their turn, you know?
Yeah.
So
yeah. But yeah, when he would like talk to those people and they'd say we don't have a battle tactic, that's when he'd started to implement we'll write them a new battle tactic, like a more modern, you know, for this era battle tactic, and like see how that works. And it did. So they decided to keep doing it, and they did it to Crew Boys, they did it to Stormcast, they did it to Rats. You know what I mean? So like, it's definitely something that they've been leaning on and pulling on for a while. And like, speaking of battle tactics and the double turn, just briefly, that's something that if you think about it, unless you have the option to force your opponent to not score a battle tactic, assuming that it works like the same way that it does in third right now, right? You would almost never take the double turn.
No, because you need to score battle tactics.
Because you need to score battle tactics.
Yeah, you essentially need and I like how I think this is going to work, because it basically, you run the gambit of listen, I'm going to forgo points now. Like if you're doing the double turn, if you're yes, I'm choosing to do the double turn, it's more important for me to do this now than to score a battle tactic. You're basically running the gambit of, hey, I'm not going to score points now because I'm going to cripple my opponent's army. And they can't score. They won't be able to beat me on primary or battle tactics going forward, right? So it's inherently a more risky play, because let's say the army has really good recursion and they come back and they're all over the board that you can't do anything with. They beat you. They're going to beat, instead of you tying them, they're going to beat you because you dropped the battle tactic.
Yeah.
So
yeah. The other thing is, if battle tactics are a tiebreaker,
which they are now.
So it's one of those things where it's I would see people who are good at the game and understand the tournament aspect almost never taking the double turn, because they don't want to give up those tiebreaker points.
Yes. It's an important, there's definitely, they're de-incentivizing it, right? It's not just you're making a trade, a true trade, where it's okay, you can do this thing, that you can do this very, very powerful maneuver, but it's going to cost you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's, sometimes you're just going to blow people out of the water, right? If Gargans get a double turn into a squishy army, they're going to roll them over, and that's what they want to do. Squigs, same thing. You're going to roll them over. Yeah. But there's a very important, the top of the curve, right? Where you're going to do a lot of damage, but it's not going to take somebody off the board, and it's maybe giving up that battle tactic was actually worse than you getting rid of a lot of power pieces.
Yeah. I wish they would have gone in a direction where they found a way to limit your power, whether it be with command points or something else, instead of it just being a direct.
You got half a turn. Yeah.
Yeah, or you got limited if you went with a double turn.
You do get less command points. That's an
You get one less command, but there's you know how the game plays. There's 4 people that give free command points. The people can cast this one for free. You know what I mean? There's so many ways to get
Give me those command points.
Give me those command I'm drowning in command points.
Scrag rod.
Yeah, there's so it's one of those things where I feel like they almost went too far, because I feel I think it's not going to matter for you and me. I think on our tables, there will definitely be games where I'm given the double turn. I take the double turn. I don't care about the point value because I'm going to win. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think at upper tables, it's very you do that once. And if there's one person in the upper brackets that didn't, guess what? They win all ties.
Yeah. There's also no way that what's it called? Yeah, there's no way you can do it twice in a game. There's no way you can choose to give up 2 battle tactics.
No, there's no way. Which is again,
I think that's good. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where it's I think it's good, because getting doubled, if you get doubled and you didn't plan to get doubled,
it sucks.
It's one of those things where you just lose. You know what I mean? For a very long time, until you learn how to do it, you are just going to lose. You know what I mean? It's a big feels bad moment for anybody involved, right?
Welcome to the game. Go back.
Welcome
to
the game.
Yeah.
Because that is I think you don't get to the top, you don't get to the top tables until you understand how to position your army and take 2 turns from your opponent while also scoring points. You know what I mean? That's a big fence that divides people like you and me from
top
people
tables.
People that are consistently at top tables. You know what I mean? However, I feel it almost makes this a non-choice for them, because now they kind of have to if that's a tiebreaker thing, and if you're just going on point differential, you know what I mean? Now your points are no longer higher. You know what I mean? I think people will just choose to either play better or eke out damage in other ways than doing the double turn.
Yeah.
So it feels, and I think the Honest Wargamer kind of like talked a little bit about this, and I don't fully agree with what he was saying, but it feels like it basically forces you to choose path A or path B, which is like completely just override and kill your opponent, or it's like hard locking. Like the double turn only exists now in name.
Yeah, I don't think it's that final.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's still, because the game is fluid and there's like 10,000 decisions before the end
Different
of the
things
game
happening all over all the time.
Like it's another. It makes the choice weightier, which I think it should be. I think it was a good change.
Yeah.
I think it shouldn't be I'm going to take the double and suffer no recompense.
Yes.
I'm going to take the double, and this is like a conscious choice I'm making. I have to make it worth it.
Yeah, I agree. I would love to see a stat where like when you're presented with the double, how many people don't take it? And in the article, they talked about like, it's a very strategic, like at the upper tables, it's a very strategic thing because now you're giving up your opportunity. You know what I mean? To potentially double in a better position, or like they'll get to double you.
Yeah,
like,
you're no longer in the gun. You're giving them power position.
Yep. And as much as I understand that, you're making a 50-50 to a slightly not 50-50 roll. I don't think you're giving it to them. You're giving them like 5% more.
Well, you're giving it's just the opportunity to get a double. Like there's 100%. If you're going second, there's 100%. Like you can't get a double if you're going first. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's basically like if you're in power position or
That's
you're
fair.
not in power
That's
position.
Fair. Yeah.
You're deciding like basically, do I want to use it now? Do I want to burn my power position now, or do I want it? Like, do I think I can hit him harder next turn? Like if I got it to get it next turn,
Yeah. But I'd love to see the breakdown of like, when did people not choose it?
Yeah.
I feel like
interesting.
Anytime, and again, it might just be to the caliber of game that I'm playing specifically.
It's always second turn. Like when people don't take it, it's always second turn.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, like I need you to come a little closer to me, or I need to get a little closer to you.
Yeah. I think there's been one time that I can, in my memory, be like, oh, I don't want to take the double turn because like I can do one thing and that's not really a thing that I want to do. Like I can kill this one other guy, but I think it's more important for us to shake out a little bit before this happens.
Yeah, 100%. Like let you come out a little more, move around a little more.
Yeah. So I'd love to see the actual stats on like how many times, like, is it like a 90%? Like, oh yeah, of course because the majority of the time that I see it, I'm like, of course I take it.
Yeah. I'm sure that it's one of those things that like, especially like with the, what's it called, winding down, like you'll be able to kind of like, I don't know if there's like a specific person that's making these stats up, but like you can go through at top tables at the end of tournaments and just be like, okay, like you can look at their stat sheet, I don't know if it's, I know in tabletop tactics, like I can see when I do, I don't know if you can see when they do in their, I don't think it goes turn by turn. I think it's just totals so, in BCP. So
yeah,
I'd be interested though. I agree.
And the last thing I kind of want to mention was something I thought about thinking more about the 3-inch engagement range. So there's a lot of, what's that?
No longer a thing.
Well, like 3-inch engagement range is a thing.
Yes, but I'm saying like weapon ranges are
no longer being a thing. Yes. Yeah, and we've talked about that at length last episode. But there's a big game that is played in the combat phase now currently where it's like 2.9. Like people say because like
2.9 or 3.1. It's one of
those. Exactly. You want to be 2.9. You want to be 3.1, and that's basically just saying, hey, when we go into the combat phase, is this person eligible to fight? Because if they're within 2.9 inches, they are now eligible to fight. And with things being 3-inch range, I wonder how that's going to play into that sort of mini game, or like of that very important element of putting a dangerous hit piece behind a screen, or like bubble wrapping a dangerous hit piece. You know what I mean?
Well, it's going to be one of those things like you're still going to mitigate some damage, right? Because you only like it unless it's a single. Like if it's a single monster, you're not mitigating anything, right? Like they can fight right over the screen. It doesn't matter because it's one model.
Yeah.
But
unless there's a rule that stipulates you have to fight the unit that's closest, which I believe has been a rule in 40K at some point in time.
Maybe. Yeah. Maybe. Again, that's something we haven't seen yet, right?
We haven't seen that.
But if you have a horde, you know what I mean? Like let's say you have like a unit of, 20 squigs or 30 squigs, right? Only the first line of squigs are going to be able to touch your unit, your hitty piece.
Yeah.
Everything else has to go into the screen.
Yep.
And then like you are mitigating some damage. You're getting hit by the hammer, but not as hard.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's still like some play in that, but it's definitely with, again, the leaning of the game and the cutting of the game, which I think is good for the game. Like, it's a lot less like you're not playing that weird mini game, you know. And it's not weird. It's a good. It was a strategic decision that you used to be able to make, but you no longer make. You know.
Yeah. I never did it well, and even in the times I did do it, it was almost accidental because again, I'm not great. But I'm curious how it's gonna work because like there are lots and lots of singular model hammer units that like you're not going to be able to counterpunch from a screen anymore. So like that bloodthirster is either going to hit your screen and kill your screen, or he's going to hit your if you position your hammer behind the screen to try to hit back right after the bloodthirster hit, or the bloodthirster is gonna hit your screen and punch over your screen to you immediately. Yeah. So your screen did nothing. You know what I mean? So like I'm very curious how they're gonna do that because that's definitely an element of the game.
Yeah, like it seems like it's almost gone. Like that interaction is like removed because like unless
which I don't mind. Because again, I've played this game for 3 years and I'm still not good at it. You know what I mean? Because it doesn't feel.
It's like, more brain dead. Like they made it more brain dead, which is it's good because like I think that there's ways this game can be complicated. You don't need every interaction to be complicated. You know.
So many times I don't pile in, or I just want to push my models into the enemy. You know what I mean? And so many times you have to be very, very, very specific with 100%. How you put your stuff into stuff.
Like if you fight for, like I have used screens to fight in combat first because I have something like fight lasted, and I want to make sure that other pieces can't pile into my hammers. Right?
Yeah.
So it's basically like I'm piling my screen in so you can't move through it. You can't get closer. You know?
You're playing like a pile in mini game, which
I'm
is
making
one of those
walls.
things that I just never got good at.
100%. Yeah, I'm making walls. You can't get past you can't walk over my wall. You can't move 3 inches over my wall, you know?
Yeah. So I'm definitely interested for how that changed, because that's just one of the things I thought about as I was sitting there thinking, because in the Path to Glory games, I have a very strong like Carnosaur unit, and in one of the games, a Varangard ran into my bubble wrap skinks, right? And I asked the player, I was like, "Oh, do you want to be 3 inches from my Carnosaur? Because like he'll be able to fight." And he's like, "Oh, I have like double fight." I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." So he fought my skinks, and then my Carnosaur fought, and like the Carnosaur dealt more damage than I think he was anticipating. But it was one of those things where I was like, on his turn, I was able to take a key unit off the board. In my other game versus Korn, I did not position my guy efficiently. I put him too far away from the screen. So the Bloodthirsters basically just like hit my whole screen and like killed everyone basically for free. Because I didn't put them in a position where they could do anything about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
There's no hit back.
There was no hit back. It was just like, eat my stuff and like, all right, cool, your turn. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it was one of those things where it's like, after on the drive home from that game, I was like, I should have put my guy 3 inches closer from the thing, like I did the last game. You know what I mean? And then I would have got the hit back. And it's one of those like mini games I'm just not good at.
Yeah, and it's good. I think it's a quality of life thing they're removing it.
True.
There's enough play, you know.
Yeah, but that brings us to the end of the slides. Are there anything going through this week that you want to talk about more?
No, I think honestly, like of the reveals, I think we really did a good deep dive. I know that there's a lot to come, but I think that the way they're making a modular game, the way they're building it from the ground up, gives me hope that this game is going to feel different, but like a more efficiently run Sigmar, where it's less less blah blah blah. That's exactly what we said in the beginning. Like there's less like, oh, I think this happens when this happens.
Yeah.
Oh, like this, then this, then this. It's like, oh, okay, like I'm doing this in this phase, and then this in this phase. There's no more. I don't think there's any more like ambiguous, like beginning of the hero phase,
Oh my God.
or like
yes.
Like stuff like that's gonna go away.
Yeah, I low key, and I don't think we're gonna do it now because we're all like every episode is gonna be hyping until 4th, which is not too far away. One thing I do want to note: May 22nd. That is our last day. Like,
Of
I don't know
summer,
if you know this, but May 22nd there is a Games Workshop sponsored tournament in Texas. Like they're doing their US tour. You know what I mean?
Yeehaw.
Yep. And the one in Texas, they're also hosting this is the first time to come and demo 4th for Age of Sigmar.
Ooh.
So like we already have like that solid like it might not be like the full edition of rules, right? But we will see 90% of the rules there because we'll get to see demos.
Definitely that core, like the simple rule set. Like
oh yeah, 100%. Like, or they might even have Vanguard. You know what I mean? But it's one of those things where it's like that's kind of the end date. You know what I mean? Like
it's not far away. That's a month and a half away.
That's a month and a half and away. Yeah. So like you're gonna see stuff start rolling out pretty quickly when it comes to that kind of thing. So
I want to see those tasty models. Show me the rats.
Show me the rats. I want to see a new War Scroll. Like that's what got me real hyped for 10th was when they showed the War Scroll of
the Intercessor.
Or the data sheet.
Yeah.
Yeah, for like the one little Tyranid like core.
Oh yeah, it was Termagaunt.
Yeah, I don't know. One of the gaunts.
Yeah.
They showed that, and then they showed like an Intercessor, and I was like, oh, that's how they're changing it. And that's when everything started clicking with me for 10th, and I was like, I love that. I love everything they're doing with that. You know what I mean? So, yeah. So I'm excited to see like all of that kind of stuff. Also, like Wounds became health. It's already the best edition of the game's ever been.
Kyle loves
Can't
it.
top that. It
Kyle
like
loves it.
40K.
That's the stuff that makes
team.
Kyle's like the fireworks go off in Kyle's brain. He's like, "Health is coming," and I was like, "It's kind of already here." But I get that the words were a little clunky. I get the words.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where it's like
that change isn't for us. Like
no, it's for the people who are just starting, who's going to have that same problem that I had for like a whole month, where I was like, how does the wound system work?
How wound go? Wound?
Yeah, why? Wait,
2 wound. I don't understand.
Okay, so you've rolled 2 wounds, so I lose a wound, and you're like, no, you take an armor save between that, and it's like, why? But they're the
that's
same
how game
word.
work, Kyle. That's how.
I don't know, dude.
That's how game.
Why not just call it health?
You do know. You do. I agreed. And people do colloquially just call it health. Like, hey, how many? You know. But it's better. It is better. I agree 100%. But I remember like we had this conversation, and you were like, "Help!" And I was like, "What's changing?" And you're like, "The words." And I was like, "Cool."
I'm happy for you, man.
I'm happy
living that life that you got going on for you right now.
You keep eating that popcorn, kid. You keep eating.
It's the best thing ever.
Amazing.
Oh yeah, the battle tactic thing is the only thing that I'm like, really, you're not gonna change?
Yeah, I don't know
any of that.
I think there's good things about it.
Yeah.
Like I think there's like we covered it. There's good things about it. It's a tough thing to throw away when it's a very good mitigation piece for armies. So
yep. Yeah.
Hopefully they're good.
Hopefully they're good. They're here to stay, so hopefully they're good. But yeah, there's not anything else.
No,
we can wrap it up.
We'll see you guys next time.
See you guys next time. We'll be talking more about rules and stuff. So see you then.
Bye.
Bye. Two, one.
What is up, brother? What is up? Tuesday.
Oh. Why are you like this?
I don't know.
All right, let me me stop.
What?